The episode opens with a flashback to 1908 during a vibrant fair. A presenter announces the arrival of Pennywise the dancing clown, and the children cheer with excitement. Pennywise appears on stage, provoking awe, joy, and even a touch of sadness from the crowd. As he begins to dance, several children join him, while an entity, disguised as a small child, watches quietly from a distance. After the performance, Pennywise, whose real name is Bob Gray, heads backstage to remove his makeup. His daughter Ingrid accompanies him and happily comments that more people are sure to come that night. She wishes he could hear how the audience talks about him, because his show brings them so much happiness. Ingrid, dressed in her own clown costume, proudly explains that she did her makeup herself. Bob, pleasantly surprised, praises her and calls their act the Pennywise and Periwinkle Show, referencing her mother's old stage name. Ingrid insists she likes keeping it. She then asks her father if he ever misses the circus. Bob admits that he does. He misses the crowds, the energy, and the chaos of life under the big top. He adds that someday he'll return, but with a brand new act unlike anything anyone has ever seen. Ingrid listens lovingly and embraces him, showing the close bond they share.
My act will be different, something new. Something no one's ever seen before.
Next, we see Bob already transformed into Pennywise, drinking and smoking as he prepares for his nighttime performance. Suddenly, he senses someone approaching from the woods, a young boy. Pennywise greets him and tells him to leave, explaining that the show is happening somewhere else. But the boy's presence feels strangely unsettling. The child remarks that Pennywise seems to attract children, to which the clown responds that it's an odd thing for a kid to say. The boy then claims he can't find his parents. Pennywise answers that he can't find his either since they're dead. When the boy asks for help searching for them, Pennywise refuses, reminding him that he has work to do. Suddenly, a loud sound echoes from the trees. The child insists that it must be his mother, and distant screams begin to fill the air. He reaches out, takes Pennywise's hand, and leads him into the woods. This scene implies that the entity lures victims by appearing as a lost child searching for his parents. Later, Ingrid anxiously searches for her father. Along the way, she overhears several people whispering nervously. They urge each other to stay calm and question whether the attacker was really him. Yet they can't imagine who else it could have been. They discuss searching for clues, checking the woods, and even the possibility that something dragged him into the undergrowth. The show's manager approaches Ingrid and reveals Pennywise's handkerchief, now completely stained red. He explains that he found it among the vegetation and suggests that perhaps wolves, common in the area, were responsible. The moment Ingrid sees the handkerchief, she breaks down in tears, devastated by what may have happened to her father. In the present, a group of masked and armed lynchers arrives at the black spot. A visibly nervous couple enters first, warning the crowd that trouble is coming. Moments later, the masked men storm in, aiming their weapons at everyone. Their leader insists the situation can be simple. They are only after one person, Hank, and once he's handed over, they will leave. Among those present, the attackers recognize Norma Price, the white singer. One of them scolds her for being there, ordering her to go home, with hints that the masked attacker might be her own daughter. The men make it clear that they know Hank is hiding somewhere in the venue and promise that if he surrenders, the party can continue without further interruption. Halloran steps forward, telling them they have the wrong place since the black spot is a recreational center reserved for military personnel. The masked men dismiss this, saying they will search every corner. Before they can start, Hank presents himself voluntarily to prevent bloodshed. Ronnie screams in desperation, begging her father not to give himself up, unable to bear the thought of being separated from him. Hank pleads with the attackers to leave the rest of the people alone. When the military personnel draw their official weapons, the masked men raise their hands and feign compliance, retreating as if surrendering. However, once outside, they trap everyone inside the building, ignite Molotov cocktails, and begin shooting through the windows. Inside, chaos erupts immediately. Flames spread quickly, smoke fills the air, and visibility becomes nearly impossible as the black spot burns violently. Those inside the black spot try to escape, but the exits are blocked. Gunfire claims many victims as screams, crackling flames, and desperate cries fill the air. The building quickly becomes a raging inferno. Amidst the chaos, Ronnie frantically searches for her father through the smoke and noise. March's arm catches fire, and Halloran begins to experience his terrifying visions, seeing the dead move through the flames while the ghostly figure of a soldier passes silently by. Seski, the legendary warrior chief who had pursued it years ago, appearing with an eerie and solemn presence. Amidst the growing inferno, Pennywise appears, moving with a sinister, unsettling dance through the flames. He calls out to a woman named Norrin, extends his hand, and assures her that he knows a way out. Panic-stricken and trusting him, she takes his hand, unaware of his deception. Ronnie rushes forward, screaming Will's name, only to witness a horrifying scene. Pennywise is devouring Norrin. The clown looks at her mockingly.
Do I have face on my face?
Terrified, Ronnie begins to run but trips. Halloran finds her, calms her, and promises to get her out alive. Suddenly, he senses Pennywise's presence as well. The clown greets him with a sinister,
Hello, Hickey.
and taunts him, implying that maybe Halloran isn't the only one seeing these horrors. Around him, multiple dead appear, some headless, others charred, creating a vision of pure terror. Halloran pleads with Seski to show him where the other children are. Outside, the lynchers decide it may be time to leave. Bowers is horrified by their actions, but one insists they must stay until they are certain Hank is dead. Most, however, begin to withdraw, convinced no one will survive inside. Guided by Seski, Halloran locates the children. March and Rich attempt to escape, but the roof collapses in front of them, blocking the way. Hank, Ronnie, and Will manage to break through and reach the exterior. Meanwhile, Rich instructs March to climb into a refrigerator, insisting it's the only way to survive. She hesitates, arguing it's too small, but he insists. Tearfully, she realizes he plans to sacrifice himself. March pleads with him not to, but Rich closes the refrigerator door, giving his life so that March can live.
He's not here for the...
It is undoubtedly one of the saddest scenes in the whole episode. From inside, March asks him to let her out, but Rich won't allow it. He asks if she remembers what he said about knights, those who sleep with something beside their bed. She nods. Rich replies that they not only pee in chamber pots, but they also protect the maidens. Then he asks if she remembers that day when the guinea pigs appeared in the hallway because Roby Mueller burst into the lab. It was during their first week of school, and everyone went out to see the commotion. March had come out of the classroom wearing a black sweater and a gray skirt with a string tied to her finger. She laughs, surprised that Rich remembers those details. He confesses that he found her so beautiful that he couldn't help but wonder.
Can I have some?
March remembers that she noticed him looking, and without thinking, replied, "Take a picture, it'll last longer." She didn't say it meanly. In fact, she didn't even know what it meant. Later, when she understood, she thought of everything she would have liked to answer. Through tears, March tells him that she loves him. Rich, with serenity and a final tenderness, replies that he loves her too.
I love you, Rich. I love you too, March.
Meanwhile, outside, Stan struggles to start his car while the others abandon him. As he checks under the hood, Periwinkle appears from the shadows. Confused, Stan asks if she is Ingrid. She greets him naturally, claiming that this form represents her true essence. Irritated, Stan warns her to go home and remove the junk from her face. Suddenly, Periwinkle murmurs,
Hello, Papa.
Stan turns and sees Pennywise wielding a massive butcher knife, which he uses to brutally kill Stan while Periwinkle watches silently. Pennywinkle reveals that everything she did was intentional, to lure Pennywise to that place. She knew there would be blood, fear, and resistance, ensuring his return. Pennywise commands her to show reverence.
Show me the bow.
She obeys, blowing her clown trumpet. He applauds her, smiles macabrely, and whispers,
Come to Papa.
She embraces him and professes her love. Pennywise praises her actions, declares he will now rest, but reassures her he will always return. In desperation, she pleads for him not to leave. Then Pennywise smiles with a terrifying, macabre expression. Ingrid realizes she is not facing her father and asks his true identity. He responds,
I am Pennywise, your dancing daddy.
admitting that he devoured her real father but claiming that he still exists inside him and she can feel him. He erupts in a grotesque, haunting laugh. Overwhelmed, Ingrid begins removing her costume, begging him to stop. Pennywise, with a seductive and cruel tone, commands,
Come to Papa.
opening his enormous mouth to reveal the deadlights, the hypnotic, mind-shattering lights he uses to break people and plunge them into madness. Later, firefighters enter the burned-out building and find March alive inside the refrigerator. She is devastated by the scene, and her grief intensifies when she sees Rich's lifeless body outside. Overcome with emotion, she clings to him and cries inconsolably. Ronnie arrives moments later and also breaks down upon discovering Rich dead, their shared sorrow amplifying the heartbreak amid the ruins. As the children remain outside, shattered, a woman removes her wig and laughs maniacally. Shortly after, Ingrid is carried away on a stretcher to Juniper Hill, her mind already broken. March notices Rich's hand dangling and, with a fractured voice, asks the responders to pause. She gently places his hand back on the stretcher, holding on to him one last time. Will and Ronnie try to console her, offering some comfort amid the pain. Hanlon arrives with Charlotte, urgently seeking Will. Charlotte, worried, checks if he is hurt, and he reassures her he is fine. Ronnie whispers to Charlotte that her father is hidden in the woods. Meanwhile, Halloran continues experiencing his haunting visions. Hanlon approaches him, and Halloran brusquely replies, later apologizing for his behavior, blaming the murmurs of the dead. Shaw suggests he rest, but Halloran remains haunted, observing the warrior chief silently from afar. Charlotte makes a call to assist Hank, promising that her friend can help him and his family escape Derry. Hank, reassured, decides to go to her location. Will plans to take Ronnie and March to Lily's house to tell her about Rich personally. Charlotte expresses concern, warning that danger still exists in the city and among its inhabitants, the true monsters. She insists she will stay, and Hank confirms that Ronnie will as well. To move safely, Hank dons Hanlon's uniform, and the two leave while Charlotte reminds Will to stay home. At Lily's house, Ronnie and March arrive to find her exhausted and sleep-deprived. Lily greets them, and upon hearing about the fire, asks if everyone is okay. Ronnie reassures her that her father, Hank, as well as Will, are safe. March begins to cry, and when Lily inquires about Rich, March's weeping tells the tragic truth. Without words, the girls convey their grief clearly. They gather at the tower to collect Rich's belongings and deliver them to his family. March discovers a paper airplane Rich had made, gently picks it up, and begins to cry. She confesses that he never got to launch it down the main avenue. Ronnie and Lily embrace her, sharing in her sorrow and weeping together over the loss of Rich. Meanwhile, at the excavation site, the team locates the pillar wrapped in the turtle's shell. Fuller tells Han that Halloran was right. They carefully place the pillar in a box and prepare to transport it in a truck. Fuller stops Han from getting in, explaining that while the original order was to move the pillar 3 kilometers north, the new plan is to take it to the base for analysis. Han reminds him that the initial instructions were always to move each pillar toward the center of Derry. Fuller assures him that Halloran has been heard, and that with the entity asleep, this is the perfect opportunity to study the pillar's physical properties, which may help locate the others more efficiently. He tells Han to relax, promising they are in the final stretch, then departs with other personnel. Observing from the woods, Daniel quickly runs to warn the others about what he has witnessed. At the same time, Charlotte visits Rose, reminding her that she had offered her friendship if ever needed. She introduces Rose to Hank, who is sitting in the car, and Rose invites them in. While preparing coffee, Rose shares some news. The pressure will ease because they now believe Hank is dead, and her friends in Montreal can help the Grogan family with updated documents and necessary support. However, the challenge remains getting Hank across the border, as Charlotte notes that customs isn't exactly lenient with the dead. At that moment, Daniel bursts in, warning Rose that problems have arisen. Back at the base, preparations are complete to insert the pillar into the lava. Suddenly, Hanlon arrives, pointing a gun and shouting for the procedure to stop immediately. Weapons are aimed at him as Fuller, shocked and furious, demands to know what he thinks he's doing. Han explains that he only mentioned studying the pillar's physical properties. Shaw then appears privately, explaining that operational security comes first. He tells Han that the threat to the nation isn't from abroad, but from within. Americans attacking each other, racial unrest, extremist movements, and a fractured society. Shaw argues that fear is the only way to enforce order in a country governed by laws. Without it, anarchy would prevail. Hanlon realizes Shaw never intended to imprison it. The plan was always to release it. Shaw references the previous night's fire, noting that fear settled over the streets and people remained subdued, showing the effectiveness of his approach. Han, horrified, questions turning the entire country into a large-scale Derry at the cost of children's lives. Shaw replies that soldiers accept collateral damage. Han protests that a defense inspector would call them insane. But Shaw insists that destroying the pillar now would be pointless, as the evil is already unleashed. Following Shaw's order, the pillar is lowered into the lava, leaving the cage open and awakening Pennywise from hibernation. Hank points a gun at Shaw, demanding the order be revoked, but Fuller forces Hanlon to lower his weapon. Shaw calmly tells him that his actions may have already saved the country, and that, if he wanted to be a hero, he has succeeded. After Han leaves, Shaw instructs Fuller to ensure that Hanlon does not leave the base under any circumstances. At Hanlon's house, Will receives a call. It's Ronnie. Will tells her he's very sorry, but his mother won't let him out. Ronnie tells him they went to the tower to collect Rich's belongings, and suddenly she starts crying. She confesses that nothing is okay, that she can't forget that Rich is gone or the way he died, as if he had suffocated. Suddenly her tone changes, and she tells him that her mouth is watering. Will doesn't understand until he hears,
I can smell his stinky little broken boy body.
The voice is no longer Ronnie's. Will screams at her to shut up. He already knows who it is, and it won't scare him. He's tired of being afraid. Turning around, Pennywise appears in front of him, opening his enormous mouth, and Will is caught in the deadlights. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for all the latest updates and videos. You won't want to miss what's coming next.